We're now ready to finish up the page on the integumentary system. We had just finished talking about the papillary region, which gives you your fingerprints. Next up is the reticular region of the dermis, and that is pretty much the rest of it. So from here down to the bottom of the dermis, and then where the hypodermis begins is the end of it. And that reticular region, I'm going to use a green pen here, is irregular collagen fibers, so dense, irregular, fibrous connective tissue. And the purpose of that fibrous connective tissue is that these collagen fibers that are found there resist tearing. They give your skin its integrity. And if it breaks down, our skin becomes more fragile. We do tend to see this in elderly people. They get scratches more easily and their skin tears. It also will give a smoothness to the skin. And if you are a female, estrogen enhances the smoothness of the skin. Okay, now let's look within the dermis, and specifically really within the reticular region, at a number of accessory organs. Let's start with sweat. I'm going to use a yellow highlighter. And what we're highlighting right now is called a Sudoriferous Gland. And that means sweat. Sounds a little bit like Sodor, like the island of Sodor. So I always thought of Thomas the Train lived on the island of Sweat. So this is a sudoriferous gland, sweat, and that is going to be stimulated by sympathetic neurons during fight or flight. So let's go ahead and put in, with a green highlighter, some nervous input. That's what I'm going to be using this green for. Synapsing. So the neurons control the glands of the skin. And right next to that, you'll notice an arteriole. That's a blood vessel in the skin. So I'm going to outline that in red. Arterioles can constrict or dilate to regulate the flow of blood in the skin. You might recall right back up here when we were talking about temperature regulation in the skin, this is what we're talking about. If the arterioles dilate, you're going to get more blood flow in the skin and you can cool off. If the arterioles constrict, you're going to get less blood flow in the skin and the core can remain warm. Unfortunately, that's why frostbite is common if someone is in a very cold environment, because their arterioles constrict to keep their heart and lungs warm, and then the skin literally freezes. And once it's frozen, or it's actually, then it gets little ice crystals in it, which destroy the cells. Okay, so that's an arteriole. Let's go ahead and write that on here. So during sympathetic stimulation, you sweat more, and the arterioles constrict. The exception to that would be in areas where you might need to cool off, in which case they could dilate. But if you think of the classic example of someone finding out a very shocking piece of information and the blood drains from their face, what's happening is that the arterioles in the skin of their face are constricting, and then they're looking more pale. Okay, now let's talk about hair. So this is a hair follicle. So your hair gets longer by mitosis that goes on in the follicle, and then the cells, as they get longer, push out farther and farther. And that, of course, is why the ends of your hair are the oldest and the most likely to be damaged by, heat and dryness and things like that. The hair follicles on much of your body can stand up on end by a muscle right here called the Erector Pili that's attached to each hair follicle on your body except, ironically, except for the ones on your head. So this is the Erector Pili, plural. So Pili means hair. If it said Pili, that would mean plural for lots of them. And when this contracts, it will make the hair stand on end, and you'll notice a visible goosebump. If you see a dog that is upset or a cat that is freaked out, you'll notice a "Rawr," right? The cat, it's all of its hair stands on end. That's because of these Erector Pili muscles. Of course, they're furry animals, and so it's really obvious when that's happening to them. When it happens to us, we feel goosebumps, but the people around us can't tell. Now, what would be really funny is if we had Erector Pili muscles on our head, and every time we got in a fight or got mad at someone, literally our hair stood on end, but that doesn't happen. Okay, so to go over this again, sweat glands, that's going to happen more during sympathetic stimulation. The arterioles of the skin generally will constrict during sympathetic stimulation unless your body starts to get overheated from the physical action, and then it can automatically allow a little more blood to cool you off. And then the Erector Pili muscles, those are contracted by sympathetic stimulation. And that can also serve a temperature regulation effect, right? Because all of those smooth muscles contracting all over your body are going to generate heat. So they can generate heat to warm you up. And actually, we should add that over here. So yeah, we said constricting the capillaries to keep you warm, but let's use a black pen, another way that heat can be generated when you're cold, you could put heat generated by Erector Pili muscles. The word erector means to stand up. Maybe you remember erector sets that your grandpa had or something. Okay, and then we'll highlight that in pink because it goes along with what we were talking about with regulating body temperature. Okay, then can take a look at, and I added a little bit of nervous stimulation there, you probably noticed that. So now let's use purple to show you an oil gland. This is a sebaceous gland. It makes sebum, or oil, and that then is secreted onto the hair follicle, helps protect it. So if you're washing your hair and washing your skin every day, you're washing away your body's natural lubrication. And this is particularly a problem with little kids. Like a mom will bring home her new baby and she'll think she wants to keep that baby so clean, and she's giving it a bath every day. Before she knows it, that baby's got dry skin, maybe got a little bit of a rash. For the most part, clean them when they're dirty, but let your body generate its own natural oils. It's not until the oils have been there for a reasonable amount of time that bacteria start to build up, and then they give off bad smells. Okay, while we're speaking of bad smells, I want to mention that there can be two different kinds of sweat glands. Ecran is one, and the second kind is apocrine. And apocrine are found in what you would consider the smelly spots. So the axillary region, that's the armpit. I'm sorry that this is so small on this video. I'm running out of room here. Anyway, the axillary regions, and then the groin. The ecran sweat glands are found pretty much everywhere that you can think of, like a little kid sweating, which is pretty much most of your body. There are a few places you don't have sweat glands. And it's the apocrine ones don't become really active until puberty. And they are definitely more odoriferous. Some people would say it smells bad, but supposedly when a woman is ovulating, somewhere around day 14 of her cycle, she'll find male armpit sweat arousing, which most people would not think is great. Now, men, on the other hand, they've done a study on this too, of what smell they find most arousing. They found at whatever day of the month it is that cinnamon rolls are the most arousing. Okay, so back to serious things. The nervous input is also generated all the way to the cells of the stratum basal to stimulate mitosis of those cells. And I think that we're just about done with this one. So I'll see you in class.